What's up, Mech fans, and welcome back to the channel. So just the other day, we got a brand new trailer for Super Robot Wars Y, and I have not reacted to it for the simple reason that this thing is 13 minutes long. But today we're essentially going to go through the trailer, look at all the new series that were announced, all the series that are returning, all the details about gameplay, different additions, and of course the release date that was announced. But before we dive into all of that, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comments section below. If you've already seen this trailer and you know all the series that are involved with this, then let me know what you're most excited to see in the game. Without further ado though, let's get started. And like I said, we're just going to run through this trailer, look at all the different series that are involved in here. Probably about half of this is actually just going through individual series like the first trailer did, but of course here, they basically announced every series that is involved. Kicking things off with Radiant the Brave. Now, I am completely unfamiliar with this series. Looks like it's kind of along the lines of Godzilla V, Volta's V, so I assume it's from the same creator as that. Looks very Go Nagai-esque, so it might be a Go Nagai series, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, this is very much classic super robot looking stuff. Next up though, we do have Combatula V, which is one that was actually initially announced for the series. I'm slightly more familiar with this, but also not really, because it was in Megaton Musashi W Wide. Fantastic game, by the way, which if you're a fan of super robot stuff, definitely go play that. I'm a really big fan of the look of this. I don't know a whole lot about the series, but you know, it's a cool addition. Of course, it's a Super Robot Wars game. You've got to involve super robot stuff. It can't just be the iconic Gundam stuff, which of course we will talk about soon enough when it does come to that. Then we've got Aura Battler Dunbine. Now, this is one that definitely caught my eye watching the first trailer. Again, I'm very unfamiliar with this. I think it's an isekai mecha, similar to what Escaflowne is, but this looks really cool. I mean, this thing transforms into a fly. I just love the unique design of this. Also, after this bit, which we're talking about here with Aura Battler Dunbine, there is another Aura Battler Dunbine in New Story of Aura Battler Dunbine. This one looks really cool. I really love the look of this mecha. It's kind of more of a white grey look, very Knight-esque, but then of course it's got all the wings and that. And then we have Heavy Metal El Gaim. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Now, this is actually from Yoshiyuki Tomino, which I did not know about. I think this came before Gundam. I love the look of the design of this. Reminds me a hell of a lot of the Psycho Doga, which I think originates from the Shaz Counterattack manga, Beltorchika's Children, and I think that's a fantastic looking design. So of course this looks very cool. I imagine that there was probably some inspiration there, because of course, like I said, this does come from Tomino, and yeah, I'm unfamiliar completely with the history and backstory on this thing, but it looks really cool. Now we move on to some Gundam stuff. There's plenty of Gundam in here, of course. It is the most iconic mecha and I guess giant robot franchise, and we kick things off with Zeta Gundam. Great addition, of course, one of the all-time most acclaimed Gundam series. And then we have Shaz Counterattack, which is in here. No double Zeta, at least as it stands. Maybe they'll add it as DLC. But yeah, Shaz Counterattack is in there, the new Gundam, Amuro, all that kind of stuff. Really cool looking things. And then we have G Gundam, which of course, this is one that we already knew about from that first trailer. This was the first Gundam announcement that they did alongside which from Mercury, which we'll talk about soon as well. They also announced Gundam Wing Endless Waltz. Really, really cool. I'm a big fan of the Wing Zero from Endless Waltz, so great addition to this. No sign of actual TV wing, which is kind of surprising. I thought they would have gone with standard wing considering it's 30th anniversary this year, but hey, they'll do what they'll do. Next up though, one that I'm of course very excited for, and that is Gundam Seed Destiny. This is a personal favorite of mine when it comes to Gundam, so of course this being included in there, Shin in the actual Destiny Gundam, great stuff. Now, one thing I do want to know actually when it comes to this trailer is that they do hyper focus on just individual, they kind of hyper focus on an individual hero robot and then one that's going to be an enemy. There will be more from these individual series, which we do actually see at the end of the trailer, but when you're looking at Seed Destiny, for example, I have no doubt that Athra and Kira will probably be playable characters. It is not just going to be one character per series. And then, of course, with Zeta Gundam, for example, I'm sure that Quattro will also be a playable character. Amuro will probably be a playable character, which it will be from Shaz Counterattack. But, for those that are, wondering when it comes to this trailer, they're not showing off every single character and every single robot. They're essentially just giving an overview of each individual series. And that ends off things for now concerning Gundam. Like I said, we've got Zeta, we've got Shaz Counterattack, we've got G Gundam, we've got Endless Waltz, we've got Seed Destiny, and then we move on to Dynamic Planning Original. Now, I'm not 100% sure what this is. I think it's something to do with a certain company and their kind of original takes on certain mecha designs. I don't know exactly what it is, but we've got a Mazin Kaiser type thing going on here, which is really cool. I think it's familiar to the Super Robot Wars franchise, but I have no idea about it. Then we have Mazin Kaiser versus the Great General of Darkness. Pretty unfamiliar with this. I mean, I'm kind of familiar with Mazinga stuff to a very brief degree. Like, I know of it. I don't know the full backstory on everything. But then we have Majestic Prince, which this is another one that really stood out to me from that first trailer. I know a lot of people do like this series. I think it's like somewhat popular and like a little bit more known than some other mecha series out there. But in particular, I love the robot design here. Definitely very much up my alley. And then we have Code Geass, Lelouch of the Resurrection, which, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of that film, seeing some Code Geass representation is always cool. And specifically in this trailer, we've got Callan in the upgraded Gurren from that film. But yeah, now we move on to some of the new to Super Robot Wars series on consoles. So these are ones that maybe featured on other Super Robot Wars games in the past, but have not been on direct console games. First off, we do have Getter Robo Arc, another one that was announced in that first trailer. I'm somewhat familiar with Getter Robo. I've never watched any of the series, but I know of it. I know of the designs and that. Looking really cool. And then we have Macross Delta Passionate Valkyrie, I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is the Macross Delta film. So essentially, we're involving Macross Delta stuff in here, and it's the only representation we have for Macross, which, I kind of get. Like, Macross is, of course, a long-running franchise, but in the grand scheme of things, it's fairly small. It's not as substantial as Gundam, so only including one series in here to kind of make room for a lot of other super robot stuff and other mecha stuff completely makes sense. Personally, I would have liked to see like Macross Plus. That's just like a personal preference of mine. But then we have, of course, one of the big new ones is The Witch from Mercury season 1 specifically, because at the time when they started making this, they couldn't involve season 2. But of course, looking really cool. We've got Soletta, we've got Well and his specific Delanza in here, and then a really interesting addition, which, like I said, this is another new series to this franchise, and that is Quadruple S Dynazena, which is, of course, from the Gridman universe. Again, this is another, like, fairly new series. I think it came out in 2021, so just before Witch from Mercury. As much as I do love me some Gundam, and by some, I mean a lot, one of the most, like, awesome things about the Super Robot Wars franchise is the fact that it can introduce you to these, like, really unknown mecha franchises, because you kind of draw people in with like Gundam and Macross and these more well-known things, and then it's like, well, we're throwing these things that no one's ever heard of, and then they kind of grow a love and appreciation for it. So there's like so many series in here that I never would have like even thought about, but because they're involved in this game, I'm going to get introduced to them, I'm going to get exposed to them, and then potentially go out and watch them and maybe fall in love with them, which I think is just a really cool thing about doing these like massive crossover kind of games. But now we move on to the one that it's got to be the most shocking, surprising, unexpected of them all. When it kind of showed up, I was like, what the hell? Why is this included? But then when they show it and they show the context, it's like, okay, it's kind of mecha, so it makes sense. That is Godzilla Singular Point, which is the anime series that was on Netflix. But when they first showed it, they showed off Jet Jaguar, which makes sense. Like, it is a robot, it's a mecha, it's piloted. Completely adds up. We'll talk more about Godzilla Singular Point soon, though. And that pretty much wraps up all of the IP that we have in this game, but we do have some original stuff to talk about as well. Most of this, in fact, pretty much all this has actually already been shown off, which is kind of disappointing because there's not a lot of like new things within this trailer when it comes to original suits and original mecha and stuff. But we do have Cross Tsukinoa, new character that was announced, alongside his Luna Drake, which is one of the new mecha designs that we've got in here. One of the other characters that we've got, which is the sister, and that is Forte Tsukinoa, with the Luna Drake 2, which is essentially a red colorized version of the previous one that we saw. Really cool looking design. I know they've revealed like I think it's a robot Damashi figure or something of the Luna Drake, which looks really cool. They're definitely going for like a ninja vibe with it. It's like even got little throwing stars, and yeah, really cool looking. And definitely would like them to do a model kit. Whether they will, I don't know, because they have done Super Robot Wars stuff in the past, so maybe they'll make one for this. And then we also have another character, which is Echika Y Frambonet. Again, another character shown off in the initial trailer, and she pilots not a mecha, but a giant like robotic fortress kind of thing, which is called the A Advent. I assume this is going to be the base of operations for everything that goes down in this series. Completely makes sense. But it then goes on to kind of just talk through basic gameplay stuff. And this game is going to play in the same way that all of the Super Robot Wars games play, or the same way that the SDG generation games play. It's a grid kind of tactical grid setup kind of thing, with of course turn-based combat. No problems with it. Like, essentially, if you've played Super Robot Wars or the G generation games before, it's going to play exactly like that type of game. It follows that formula, which is not a bad thing, because at the end of the day, people come to this game for that kind of gameplay. So it would make sense to be like, oh, we're going to go the action route. Completely does not make sense, so keeping in with the grid-based combat, obviously it is the right way to go. And from there, the trailer essentially ends off with like a montage of showing different characters, showing different in-game animations and gameplay and all that kind of stuff. So, we see things such as Alan B in the Nobel Gundam. We see Duo Maxwell in there. We see the Macross Fortress. We see, a little bit more of the Mazin Kaiser and things like that. It just kind of shows off like more characters, more animations, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, reveals the big key art. It also showed off the Gundam Ferret as well from Mercury, which looks really good in that kind of chibi style. Yeah, I gotta say, I really love this key art. It's a good representation of everything where, like I said, it's got the stuff that sells you on things that's more well known, like a Getter Robo or like a Gundam Aerial, for example, a bit of Code Geass, but then it's got like, lesser known stuff like a Heavy Metal Elgaim, things like that. I just love like the whole aesthetic of Super Robot Wars and the way it kind of introduces you to, it kind of expands your knowledge really and expands your appreciation for this genre of giant robots doing cool shit, which is always really cool to see. And then, of course, it ends off with the release date, which is the 28th of August. Well, actually, it doesn't end off with that. There's another thing to talk about, but yeah, that's the release date. 28th of August, 2025 is when it's dropping. This year has been so good so far for mecha games. Like, we've had so many within the first few months or whatever, and we still got plenty more to come, like a Super Robot Wars Y, like Gundam Seed Battle Destiny. Really cool stuff coming around the corner, and then Mecha Break coming at some point, probably in June or July, I'd expect. So, we've essentially got like a mecha game every single month in 2025, which is kind of unprecedented from, recent memory and from my knowledge of history of mecha games. So, really, really cool, and I'm sure we'll probably still get something towards the end of the year as well. But one other thing to mention, Godzilla is in this thing, which is kind of wild to think about. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're not going to put Godzilla singular point in, not include Godzilla to some degree. So, yeah, like, maybe Godzilla is the final boss of this game, which, if true, awesome. I have no problem with it. I want to see Godzilla in this game. Like, it's just a really cool addition. To me, it's kind of a shame that they went with singular point. I completely understand it makes sense because that does involve some mecha stuff anyway. But I wasn't the biggest fan of that series. Maybe I need to rewatch it. But regardless, any Godzilla is cool to see in this game. And of course, that's what we're getting, Godzilla Ultimate from that specific series. Then they go on to mention DLC stuff and deluxe edition versions, ultimate edition versions. There's not really anything all that exciting about those kind of things. But yeah, that about ends it off for this trailer, this wildly long 13-minute release date trailer, which I think is a little bit too excessive. Like, it doesn't really become a trailer when it's like 13 minutes long. I feel like, 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes maximum should be like the absolute most for a trailer. But I mean, whatever. It's cool. It shows things off in depth, shows off everything that we're getting in this game, which is really cool. So now we just wait till August 28th for the game to actually drop. And I am very excited about this thing. Definitely going to be playing it. Of course, going to be reviewing it here on the channel. Really looking forward to this thing. Definitely one of my more anticipated games coming out for the rest of the year. Before I get out further, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content. I want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, like I said earlier, head on down to the comment section below. Let me know what you're most excited to see within this game that has been revealed. Of course, personally, very excited to see some Seed Destiny action within there. Also, Heavy Metal Elgaim, I think that looks really cool, and I'm really excited to see that. Some of the original stuff as well, of course, that's going to be great. And as a big fan of the Wing Zero Endless Waltz suit, very excited to see that incorporated. But I gotta say, like, putting Godzilla in there, even though it's not my, preference of Godzilla series and stories, it's still cool to see that giant kaiju in a game like Super Robot Wars going up against Macross suits, going up against Gundams. That is just like a dream come true for someone that loves giant robots and loves giant monsters. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.